My sister's voice cut through the soft hum of the restaurant like a knife. This night is for blood family, not tagalongs. For a moment, it felt like the entire room had inhaled at once and forgotten how to breathe. The clinking of glasses, the low chatter, the gentle piano playing in the corner. It all paused as if the walls themselves were waiting to see what I'd do. Don't look away. This dinner started with humiliation, but ended with a quiet, unforgettable revenge. Watch till the very end. I didn't flinch. I simply placed my napkin on my lap and looked at her with the kind of quiet smile that made her uncomfortable. That smile had become my shield over the years. It wasn't forgiveness. It was calculation. The dinner was supposed to celebrate family. At least that's what the invitation said in gold cursive. My parents insisted everyone dress nicely. No excuses, Jamie, it's a big night. So, at exactly 6:45 p.m., I walked through the heavy glass doors of the Riverstone Bistro. The place was elegant but not extravagant, cream-colored walls, dim golden lights, polished wooden floors. It smelled faintly of roasted herbs and expensive perfume. The host led me to the long table near the center. I could see them already seated. My sister Amanda, my parents, her husband Greg, and a cluster of friends I didn't recognize. Amanda was wearing one of her sleek black dresses, the kind that made her look like she belonged in every room. She had that same smirk she always wore when I arrived anywhere. Jamie, she said brightly, as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't spent the last 2 years reminding me I was adopted at every family gathering. You made it. I said I would, I replied calmly, taking the empty seat at the far end. It was always the far end. The waiter poured me water, and as I adjusted my chair, I noticed something subtle but deliberate: place cards. Everyone's name was carefully printed on folded ivory paper. Everyone except mine. My spot had no card. Amanda leaned toward Greg, whispering something behind her manicured hand. He chuckled low and mean. My parents didn't seem to notice, or maybe they did. At this point it was hard to tell the difference. I busied myself with the menu, pretending not to care. In truth, I'd expected this. I'd planned for this. My hand brushed the small leather folder tucked inside my purse. Just touching it grounded me. That folder held something no one at this table had seen coming. Dinner began smoothly enough. Wine was poured. My father made his usual toast about family unity, which Amanda interrupted halfway through to make a joke about keeping outsiders out. Everyone laughed except me. I just raised my glass, meeting her eyes. She hated that, when I didn't react the way she wanted. She liked loud confrontations, not quiet resistance. The first course arrived: creamy mushroom soup. My mother asked Amanda about her renovation plans. Amanda launched into a long speech about the new patio, the lighting, the family-only gatherings she was planning. Every few sentences she'd glance at me as if daring me to respond. I didn't. I listened. I observed. I noticed Greg checking his watch too often, my father fidgeting with his cufflinks, my mother forcing laughter a second too late. All tiny cracks in their perfect image. Then came the remark. It happened right after dessert menus were handed out. The waiter approached with practiced politeness, asking how we wanted the check handled. Before I could say a word, Amanda turned to him with that smug grin that made her look like a teenager again. Put it all together, she said sweetly. This is a family night. And, she tilted her head toward me, this night is for blood family, not tagalongs. The table erupted in laughter. Greg slapped his knee. My father shook his head as if she were being cheeky. My mother actually clapped. The waiter hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. I met his eyes for a brief moment, steady, calm, unbothered. Then I nodded. Go ahead, I said softly. Inside my chest tightened, but not from shame. From anticipation. Amanda thought this was another one of those nights where I'd quietly endure her cruelty, where I'd walk away holding the pieces of my dignity in silence. But tonight I wasn't here to beg for a seat at their table. Tonight I'd set the table. As conversation picked up again, I noticed small shifts. The waiter didn't leave immediately. Instead, he walked toward the woman seated a few tables away. Short silver hair, crisp cream suit, no jewelry except for a gold watch. She had been watching us for a while, occasionally jotting something in a notebook. No one paid her any attention. But I did. She caught my gaze for half a second and gave the slightest nod. It was almost imperceptible. Amanda didn't notice. She was too busy mocking my shoes to her friends. I took a slow sip of water and let my mind drift back to the months of preparation. The paperwork. The signatures Amanda never bothered to read. The calls I'd made quietly when everyone thought I'd moved on. Every insult had become a brick. And brick by brick I built something they couldn't see. The woman, my lawyer, stood now, slowly, deliberately. Her chair scraped the floor just enough to make heads turn. Amanda's laugh faltered for the first time that night. "Excuse me," the woman said clearly, her voice smooth and firm. "Before the bill is processed, there's something we need to clarify." The chatter died again. My parents exchanged confused glances. Greg frowned. Amanda tilted her head, pretending not to care but gripping her wine glass too tightly. My heart pounded, but my expression didn't change. I'd spent decades being underestimated by this family. It was almost poetic that they'd underestimate me one last time on their own stage. The waiter hovered beside the woman, nodding slightly as she handed him a folded document. He glanced at it, then at Amanda. "Ma'am, are you Amanda Whitmore?" he asked carefully. "Yes," Amanda replied, her tone sharp. "Why?" The woman smiled, not at her but at me. Just a flash of shared understanding. I leaned back in my chair, hands folded neatly in my lap. Across the table, Amanda's smirk was starting to strain. Greg whispered something in her ear. She waved him off, still pretending she was in control. But I saw it, that tiny flicker of doubt in her eyes. The piano resumed softly in the background, almost mocking her confidence. Dessert plates arrived, untouched. A soft chill crept through the room. She didn't know it yet, but the balance of power had just shifted. And it wasn't shifting back. As the woman prepared to speak again, Amanda caught my gaze. For the first time in years, she didn't look amused. She looked curious and uneasy. I met her stare and held it, silent and steady. No anger. No begging. Just quiet certainty. The air between us grew heavier, charged with something she couldn't name. She was used to me shrinking. Tonight I didn't shrink. I waited. The waiter cleared his throat, holding the paper the woman had given him. "We'll need to sort this out before finalizing the check," he said carefully. Amanda laughed a little too loud. "Oh, come on," she said. "This is ridiculous. Just run it through." But no one laughed with her this time. Even her friends looked uneasy. My father opened his mouth to say something, but my mother touched his arm. They were both watching the woman now. Everyone was. And Amanda, she was finally realizing this wasn't one of her games. I let the silence stretch just long enough to make her sweat. Then I tilted my head slightly, almost kindly, and said, "You wanted family night, Amanda. Let's make it memorable." Her eyes narrowed. "What's that supposed to mean?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The woman stepped forward, placing a hand on the waiter's folder. "Shall we?" she said. "The section closes there." With Amanda's smugness cracking, the guests leaning in, the air thick with unspoken tension. The next words would change the night entirely. But not yet. The woman stepped forward, placing a hand on the waiter's folder. "Shall we?" she said. Amanda's smirk wavered just slightly, like a curtain caught by a draft. The waiter cleared his throat, unfolded the document, and scanned it with growing focus. I watched his expression change from polite neutrality to cautious alertness. He looked up at Amanda. "Ma'am, before we proceed with the check, this document indicates that you're listed as the primary hosting signatory for this dinner." The table fell silent again. Even the clinking of cutlery from nearby tables seemed to dull, as though the entire restaurant had leaned closer. Amanda blinked. "Excuse me." She let out a short laugh, the kind she used when she thought someone beneath her had made a mistake. "I don't know what that is, but it doesn't apply to me." The woman smiled mildly, a smile that carried no warmth, only certainty. She gestured for the waiter to continue. I didn't say a word. I sat still, hands folded in my lap, heartbeat steady. This was the part I'd envisioned countless times. It wasn't about shouting or grand gestures. It was about letting truth walk in wearing silk gloves. The waiter explained, "This is a legally binding hosting agreement signed by you, Ms. Whitmore. It states that any events organized under the Whitmore Family Trust are to be financially hosted by the trustee in charge of scheduling. According to this, that would be you." He pointed gently to the top of the page. Amanda's signature, dramatic loops, always larger than necessary, was unmistakable. Greg leaned over to see the paper. "What is this?" When did you sign something like that? Amanda shrugged. I don't remember. Probably some silly form from Dad's lawyer. This doesn't mean anything. But my father wasn't laughing. His brow furrowed. Amanda, this looks official. That's your signature. It's a mistake, she snapped, her voice rising. I didn't. The woman cut in smoothly. It's not a mistake. This document was signed last fall when the trust underwent administrative restructuring. You requested to be the sole scheduler and organizer of all family unity events. That included financial responsibility, a detail you either overlooked or ignored. The last few words hung in the air like the faint chime of a bell after a sermon. I watched Amanda's face, the flush creeping up her neck, the way her fingers tightened around her wine glass. For years she'd prided herself on controlling every family gathering, every dinner, every celebration. She loved the image of being the hostess, the one in charge. But she never read the fine print. She never expected anyone else to. I had. Her friends shifted uneasily in their seats. One of them, a woman with heavy pearl earrings, muttered, Amanda, is this for real? Amanda forced a laugh too loud. Of course not. This is ridiculous. Jamie probably cooked this up. She's always looking for a way to make things dramatic. I tilted my head, keeping my voice soft. Amanda, I didn't write your signature. She shot me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. The lawyer's tone remained calm but firm. The hosting agreement is fully enforceable. The restaurant has the right to apply the entire charge to your account as the event host. It's standard procedure when events are booked under a trust. The waiter nodded, holding the paper like it was a judge's verdict. Amanda tried to regain her footing. Well, then we'll just split it. That's what family does. She gave a pointed look at me, expecting me to cave as usual. The woman didn't miss a beat. That's not what the document states. It explicitly prohibits cost redistribution. The host accepts full responsibility. Greg's patience snapped. Amanda, what did you sign? Her cheeks burned crimson now. I don't remember. I just wanted to handle the party schedule. How was I supposed to know? You were supposed to read it, my father muttered, low and disappointed. That tone, the one he used to reserve for me, made Amanda flinch. For a brief second I almost pitied her. Almost. But then I remembered every Thanksgiving where I sat at the kids' table at 58 years old. Every Christmas card where my name was handwritten in a smaller font. Every dinner where she made jokes about real family. Well, pity wasn't part of tonight. The manager approached now, drawn by the tension. A tall man with kind but firm eyes. Is there a problem here? He asked. The waiter handed him the document. He skimmed it, then nodded. It's clear. We'll charge the hosting account. Amanda let out a high-pitched laugh that didn't match her words. That accounts. Well, it's complicated. It's under the trust, so. The lawyer interrupted, handing him another folded paper. That's why this notice accompanies it. Effective as of this morning, the hosting account's personal guarantee clause was activated. Amanda's face froze. The what? The manager explained gently. It means the charge goes to your personal card on file. That's part of the hosting agreement's security clause. Greg leaned back, whistling low. You signed that. Amanda didn't answer. Her silence was answer enough. I felt a calmness settle in me like a well-made bed. This wasn't chaos. This was orchestration. The woman turned to the waiter. Please proceed with the charge. Amanda slammed her hand on the table. Wait. Her voice cracked. Heads turned from nearby tables. The image of Amanda, always composed, always superior, began to fracture under the weight of legal ink. She fumbled for her purse and handed over her card, muttering under her breath. I could see the sweat gathering at her temple. She was realizing that for once her words didn't matter. Paper did. The waiter walked away with the card. I didn't need to look to know what was coming. I'd seen her bank statements months ago. She'd bragged about maxing out credit cards to renovate the patio and host proper parties. It was all image, no foundation. As the waiter disappeared toward the register, Amanda turned on me. You had something to do with this. Don't pretend you didn't. I met her gaze, steady. I didn't forge your signature, Amanda. You did this all by yourself. Greg's voice was sharp. Stop blaming her. You didn't read what you signed. That's on you. My mother, usually her silent cheerleader, stayed uncharacteristically quiet. Her eyes darted between me, Amanda, and the lawyer. A crack was forming in the family dynamic, one that had been decades in the making. The waiter returned, his expression apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am." The card was declined. A ripple went through the table. Amanda's friends exchanged uncomfortable looks. One reached for her coat. Amanda froze like a deer in headlights. "Run it again," she hissed. "We did," he said softly. "Twice." The woman's voice remained measured. "We can offer an alternative arrangement through the trust. But that would involve accessing the secondary account, which..." She trailed off intentionally, letting the suspense hang. Amanda stared at her, speechless. I sipped my water, letting the tension unfold without interruption. This was the moment where she'd start to sense the scale of what she'd stepped into. The lawyer laid another envelope on the table, not opened yet. "Perhaps we should address this as well," she said calmly. Amanda looked at it like it might bite. "What is that?" my father asked. "Documentation regarding the financial standing of the hosting trustee," the lawyer said. Her tone gave nothing away. "It's best discussed privately." The envelope sat there like a quiet threat. Amanda pushed back her chair abruptly. "This is ridiculous. I'm not dealing with this here." Her voice was loud enough that nearby tables turned fully now. She hated scenes unless she was the one controlling them. I remained seated. "You started this here, Amanda." Her eyes met mine, not with arrogance this time but something rawer. Fear? Anger? It didn't matter. The facade was cracking. The manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, until the bill is resolved, I can't allow anyone from this party to leave." Her mouth opened then closed. For the first time, Amanda had no clever comeback. And I simply folded my napkin neatly, placing it beside my untouched dessert. The night wasn't over. Not even close. The manager's words hung in the air. "Until the bill is resolved, I can't allow anyone from this party to leave." It was the kind of statement that stripped away all performance. There was no more pretending, no more smug glances, no more control. Amanda's lips parted but no words came out. For the first time I saw something on her face I'd never seen before at a family gathering. Genuine panic. She stood abruptly, her chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. "This is absurd," she snapped, loud enough that a few tables turned to look. "I'm not staying here for this circus." The manager didn't flinch. "Ma'am, I'm sorry. Policy requires full settlement before anyone from your group can leave. It's standard for trust fund hosted events." The lawyer stood calmly at his side, hands clasped. She didn't need to speak. Her presence was enough to anchor the situation. Amanda turned to my parents. "Dad, fix this. Tell them this isn't right." My father's face had shifted from mild concern to something far more severe. "Amanda, you signed it," he said quietly. "You created this situation. Fix it yourself." The tone in his voice stunned even me. It wasn't angry. It was tired. The kind of tired that builds up over decades. Greg tried to lighten the tension, half-heartedly raising his glass. "Come on, let's not make a scene. We'll figure it out." But Amanda was spiraling. "How, Greg? The card didn't go through. Are you planning to fix it?" His jaw tightened. "You told me you had it covered. That's what you said. You wanted the control, so control it." Their argument spilled out like an untidy drawer, each accusation tumbling louder than the last. Guests who'd once giggled at her jokes were now avoiding eye contact. A couple quietly asked the waiter for their coats. I stayed silent, hands resting in my lap. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It was steady, like the tide coming in, inevitable and calm. The lawyer stepped forward, her tone polite but firm. "Perhaps, Ms. Whitmore, it would be best to settle this through the trust's secondary funds." Amanda whirled around. "And what secondary funds are those?" "There are no." She stopped mid-sentence, eyes narrowing. She'd realized something. Something she hadn't looked at in months. The lawyer tilted her head. "Perhaps you should take a moment to remember what you signed." The way she said it made a shiver run through Amanda. Through all of us, really. My mother leaned toward my father, whispering, but I caught fragments. "I told her not to rush. I said she should read everything." He didn't respond. His eyes were fixed on Amanda like a man finally seeing the cracks in a statue he'd worshipped too long. Amanda sat down heavily, her confidence bleeding out onto the starched tablecloth. For years she'd orchestrated everything. She decided who was invited. She dictated seating. She controlled conversations like a conductor leading an orchestra. But tonight the baton had slipped from her hand and she didn't know how to get it back. The manager cleared his throat. "Ma'am, we can arrange a private room if you'd prefer to handle this discreetly." Amanda's pride flared. "No. Right here is fine," she said stiffly, though her eyes betrayed her fear. She didn't want to look weak. Not in front of me. Not in front of the guest she'd spent years impressing. The lawyer placed the unopened envelope gently in front of her. "Then perhaps we should address this." Amanda stared at it like it might explode. "What is this, more legal traps?" "It's documentation regarding your current financial status under the trust," the lawyer replied evenly. "It affects the settlement options tonight." I didn't lean in. I didn't speak. I just watched. Amanda's fingers hovered over the envelope before she snatched it up and ripped it open. Papers slid out across the table. Her eyes moved quickly over the text, and then stopped. Her breath hitched audibly. "What is this?" she whispered. My father reached for the top page, his hands trembling slightly. As he read, his face paled. "Amanda," he said softly, disbelief layered into every syllable. My mother leaned in to read too. A soft gasp escaped her lips. The room had gone quiet again, except for the faint clatter of dishes in the kitchen. Even the piano had stopped playing. Amanda slammed the papers back down. "This is wrong. This is all wrong." The lawyer remained composed. "Everything there is accurate and up to date as of this morning. Your recent activity, let's just say it left certain accounts vulnerable." Greg snatched the top sheet. "You took out another line of credit?" he hissed. "Amanda, are you insane?" She whipped around. "It was temporary. I was going to fix it." He laughed bitterly. "You always say that." A strange thing happened then. The guests began to side with me without realizing it. The same friends who'd laughed at Amanda's jokes now whispered things like, "She should have read it," and "Why blame her sister?" under their breath. For years I was the quiet one in the corner, the adopted one, the extra. Tonight, silence had become my weapon, and the room itself had shifted its allegiance. The manager interrupted gently. "Ma'am, the bill must be resolved. If there are complications with your account, we have procedures. We can also involve external collection if needed." Amanda's eyes flashed. "External? Are you threatening me?" "No, ma'am," he said calmly. "I'm explaining policy." It was a small moment, but it mattered. For the first time, someone outside the family treated Amanda the way she treated everyone else, without special indulgence. Amanda's hands shook as she gathered the papers, trying to rearrange them into some semblance of control. But the documents didn't lie. Her signature, her debts, her choices, all neatly listed, time-stamped, official. My mother's voice trembled. "Amanda, what did you do?" Amanda's lower lip quivered. "I didn't think it mattered," she muttered. My father exhaled slowly, rubbing his temples. "Everything matters, Amanda. Everything." He looked older than I'd ever seen him. At that moment the lawyer caught my eye, a small, almost imperceptible nod. Not of victory but of confirmation. Things were unfolding exactly as planned. Amanda noticed the exchange. "Oh, of course," she spat. "You and your little lawyer friend. You set this up." I finally spoke. My voice was calm. "No, Amanda. You set this up the day you decided to make everything about control and never about responsibility." Her face went red, but she didn't have a comeback. She was unraveling thread by thread. The manager offered again. "Ma'am, we can make arrangements if..." Amanda slammed her hand down. "Just stop." The entire restaurant fell silent. Even the waiter holding a tray near the kitchen froze. Amanda's voice cracked. "You all think this is funny? You're enjoying this, aren't you?" No one answered. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just sat there, hands folded, watching the person who'd spent a lifetime standing over me realize that the ground had shifted beneath her feet. The lawyer leaned in slightly. "Amanda, the sooner you cooperate, the better this will be. I suggest you settle the bill using the designated secondary assets. It's the cleanest path forward." Amanda's breathing was uneven now. "Secondary assets?" she whispered as if the words themselves were foreign. Greg pinched the bridge of his nose. You didn't tell me about those either, did you? She didn't respond. I glanced around the room. Guests who once dismissed me were now whispering my name with curiosity. My parents sat in stunned silence. Amanda was cornered, and for the first time there was no easy escape. This was the moment when the tables truly turned, not through shouting, not through revenge shouted from rooftops, but through quiet precision. And it wasn't over yet. That thought echoed in my mind the next morning as sunlight streamed through my kitchen window, falling across the neat rows of teacups on the counter. The house was silent except for the soft hum of the refrigerator. It was the kind of calm that comes after a storm, not empty but charged, like the air holding its breath before the next wave rolls in. I stirred a spoonful of honey into my tea, watching the golden swirls dissolve. 4 years, mornings after family events were my quiet recovery time. I'd replay their words, their looks, their little cruelties. I'd sit alone wondering why I still kept showing up. But this morning was different. This time I wasn't nursing wounds. I was holding a plan in both hands, and for once they didn't even know it. I sat at the kitchen table, the documents the lawyer had handed me spread out in careful order. Everything from the trust restructuring to Amanda's personal liability clauses was printed in black and white. I ran my fingers along the edges of the pages like someone tracing the frame of a long-awaited portrait. This wasn't about money. Not really. It was about years of being pushed aside while she took the head of the table. It was about being treated like an extra in my own family's story. Last night had shifted the ground beneath Amanda's feet, but this morning my quiet strike would ensure she'd have nowhere safe to land. My phone buzzed. 3 missed calls from my mother. 1 from my father. And 7 from Amanda. I didn't answer any of them. I turned the phone face down and took another slow sip of tea. My silence was its own language now. Instead, I opened my laptop. The lawyer had sent me follow-up files at dawn. She worked fast, which was one of the reasons I'd chosen her. Tucked among the legal jargon was something beautiful. A series of automatic triggers that had gone into effect at midnight. Account freezes. Notifications to creditors. A transfer clause that Amanda had signed blindly years ago, assuming she'd always be untouchable. For once, I didn't need to chase anyone down. The paper was already moving. At 8:07 a.m., a knock at the door broke the stillness. I opened it to find the courier I'd arranged the week before, standing with a small stack of envelopes. Each was sealed with the same understated logo, the Family Trust's legal office. I signed for them and carried them to the table. One by one, I checked their contents. Formal notifications to banks, to the board that oversaw the trust, and to Amanda's own legal counsel. Each letter announced the activation of oversight protocols. In simple terms, every move she made with family assets from now on would require dual approval. One signature would always be mine. She'd never even realized that clause existed. She thought she'd won control years ago when the paperwork was restructured. But in her rush to claim the spotlight, she had agreed to a shared power model that remained quietly dormant, until last night. At 8:34 a.m. the first call came through again. My father. I let it ring until voicemail picked up. His voice was low, almost careful. Jamie, it's Dad. We need to talk. This is a lot. Call us back. I didn't. Not yet. I had no intention of fighting this battle through rushed phone calls and emotional appeals. I wanted everything to unfold in daylight on my terms, not theirs. I opened the blinds wider. Outside, the neighborhood was slowly waking. Cars backing out of driveways, joggers passing with headphones in, someone walking a golden retriever across the street. It all felt ordinary. Meanwhile, the foundation of my family's hierarchy was quietly tilting beneath their feet. The kettle whistled again. I poured myself another cup. Control didn't have to be loud. It could be as soft as the morning light. At 9:12 a.m. my lawyer called. Her voice was crisp, efficient. Everything is in motion. By the time Amanda wakes up fully, she'll have received the first set of notices. You should expect some resistance. I smiled faintly. I've had a lifetime of resistance. She may try to involve your parents, the lawyer continued. But legally, their hands are tied unless she convinces you to rescind. She won't, I said simply. Good, she replied. I'll be on standby for the afternoon. Don't engage emotionally. You've already done the hard part. I thanked her and hung up. She didn't need to tell me twice. Emotional entanglement was the old me. The new me understood power wasn't about shouting, it was about placement. Where you stood when the walls started shifting. By 10 a.m. the messages had changed tone. Amanda's earlier calls were frantic voicemails. "Pick up, Jamie. You don't understand what's happening. They froze my accounts. This isn't fair. You need to fix this." Later ones dripped with accusation. "I know this is your doing. Don't play innocent. You always wanted to ruin me." And then came the quiet, desperate one. "Please call me. Please." I listened to each one once. Then I deleted them. I wasn't going to give her an audience. Not yet. Around 11:15 a.m. my parents arrived. I heard the car doors slam, then my father's heavy knock on the door. I took my time opening it. My father looked older than he had last night, lines deepening around his eyes. My mother's lips were pressed into a tight line. "Jamie," he said immediately, "we need to talk." "I figured," I replied calmly, stepping aside to let them in. The house smelled of cinnamon and tea. It was my space now, warm, quiet, without their noise dominating the air. They sat at the kitchen table, the same table where my morning had begun in silence. My father leaned forward. "Amanda's accounts have been frozen. There are legal actions being triggered. Is this your doing?" I met his eyes evenly. "She signed every document herself. I didn't forge anything." "That's not what I asked," he said, sharper this time. My mother reached for my hand. "Jamie, sweetheart, this is a lot. She's your sister. She's made mistakes, yes, but maybe we can find a way to soften this. She's scared." I withdrew my hand gently. I was scared for decades. She wasn't. My father's voice dropped. "This is tearing the family apart." I held his gaze. "No. She tore it apart when she decided I didn't belong. I'm just not cleaning up after her anymore." The air thickened between us. Years of unspoken things pressed down on that kitchen like a heavy curtain. My father rubbed his temples. "She called us crying this morning. She's embarrassed." "The board called me." I interrupted quietly. "The board didn't call you. They called me. They have to. I'm now a required signatory." His eyes widened. "What?" I slid one of the letters across the table. He read it slowly, his hands trembling slightly. My mother leaned over his shoulder, her eyes growing wide. They looked at me like they were seeing me clearly for the first time. "I didn't take anything," I said evenly. "I accepted what's been mine all along." She built her little castle on assumptions. She never thought anyone would read the foundation. My mother's eyes softened, maybe with regret, maybe with fear. "Jamie, this will ruin her." I tilted my head. "I'm not ruining her. She signed the ruin herself. I'm just not stopping it this time." By noon Amanda arrived. She didn't knock, she barged in. Her hair was unbrushed, her clothes thrown together in a rush. She looked nothing like the polished woman from last night. "What did you do?" she shouted. I stayed seated at the table, calm. "Good morning, Amanda." She slammed one of the legal notices down. "They froze everything. My accounts. The house fund. Even the renovation money. Do you know what this means?" "Yes," I said simply. He turned to our parents. "You're just going to let her do this? You're really siding with her?" My father's voice was weary. "You signed it all, Amanda. We can't fix this for you." She turned back to me, eyes wide and desperate. You can call them. You can reverse it. You've always wanted this. Don't act innocent." I rose slowly, meeting her at eye level. "No, Amanda. I've always wanted peace. This," I gestured at the pile of envelopes and documents, "isn't revenge. It's consequence." She stared at me for a long moment, chest heaving, searching for the version of me she used to dominate. But that woman wasn't here anymore. Finally she let out a shaky breath. "You're enjoying this," she whispered. I shook my head. "No. I'm finally not apologizing for it." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the teacups rattled on the shelf. My parents sat in stunned silence. I gathered the papers into a neat pile. The day wasn't loud. There were no public scenes or grand speeches. But the strike had landed, quiet, precise, and irreversible. And the house was still. The papers were stacked neatly on the kitchen table. My tea had gone cold. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling the dry leaves across the front path. The quiet wasn't empty. It was full, like the room itself was aware that something final was approaching. I stood slowly, sliding the stack of legal documents into the worn leather folder that had traveled with me through every step of this journey. It felt heavier now, not because of the paper but because of what it represented. The end of pretending. For years I'd let them dictate the script. I was the afterthought, the tag-along, the silent observer in my own family story. But today that script was closing line by line. A knock at the door broke the silence. Not frantic this time, measured. When I opened it, my lawyer stood there, crisp as ever, holding a single envelope and a small silver keyring. She offered both with a knowing look. "It's time," she said simply. I took the envelope and the keys, my fingers brushing the cool metal. "Already?" She nodded. "The transfer clause was triggered automatically this morning. She signed it years ago, Jamie. All I did was activate it." I exhaled slowly, almost disbelieving. "So that's it." "That's it," she said. "All final." She never read the occupancy clauses on the family estate. She assumed she'd inherit control by default. But she didn't notice the fallback provision, naming you as the successor signatory if she violated hosting or financial compliance. Last night triggered everything. The keys jingled softly in my hand. It was a small sound, but it felt enormous. I thanked her quietly. She didn't stay long, she didn't need to. Her work was done. This part, the final part, was mine. I sat with the envelope for a long moment at the table, tracing its edges before opening it carefully. Inside was the legal notice, simple and elegant. The primary residence of the Whitmore family estate had been transferred into my name as the sole trustee. Effective immediately. No long battles. No drawn-out courtroom scenes. Just one dinner, one signature, and a clock that had been ticking silently for years. I pressed my thumb against the smooth paper. It didn't feel like winning. It felt like breathing after holding it for decades. By afternoon the storm arrived, not the weather kind. The sound of her car skidding into the driveway broke the quiet rhythm of the day. A door slammed. Her heels clacked sharply against the pavement as she stormed toward the porch. I didn't move to meet her. I stayed at the table, hands folded over the envelope, waiting. She burst through the door, her face flushed and eyes blazing. "You think this is over?" she shouted. I looked up slowly. "Yes," I said simply. She threw a crumpled piece of paper onto the table. "They sent me this. Do you have any idea what you've done?" I unfolded it carefully. It was the same transfer notice I'd just read, only hers bore a single brutal sentence at the bottom. Prior rights and occupancy privileges revoked due to breach of compliance. She was no longer just losing control of accounts. She was losing the house. "You planned this," she accused. "You waited for me to make one mistake." I cut her off softly. "Amanda, it wasn't one mistake. It was years of them." Her mouth opened, then closed again. She wasn't used to me interrupting her. I continued, my voice calm but steady. "You signed everything yourself. You wanted control so badly that you didn't bother to understand it. I didn't trick you. I just didn't stop you." She paced the kitchen like a trapped animal, her hands gesturing wildly. "This house is mine. I grew up here. I hosted every holiday, every event. And you made sure I was reminded I didn't belong at every single one," I said, my voice tightening. "You stood in this kitchen last Christmas and told me to stay out of the way while real family set the table. Do you remember that?" Her face went pale. She did. She slammed her hand against the counter. "You can't just take everything." "I didn't take it," I said quietly. "You gave it away when you stopped respecting it." The lawyer's words from earlier echoed in my mind. She assumed she'd inherit control by default. Amanda had built her power on assumption. I had built mine on patience. My parents arrived not long after, their knock soft, almost hesitant. My mother stepped inside first, her face tight with worry. My father followed, slower than usual, shoulders heavy. Amanda whirled on them. "Tell her this isn't fair. This is my house." My father didn't answer right away. He looked at me, then at the papers on the table, then finally at Amanda. "She's right, Amanda. You signed it all." "I didn't know," Amanda whispered. He sighed. "That's the point." My mother's eyes were wet. "Jamie, are you really doing this?" I met her gaze steadily. "No, Mom. I already did. You just didn't see it happening." We moved to the living room, the same living room where I'd spent years standing at the edges of family photos, slightly off to the side. The curtains were open, light pouring in. The walls looked the same, but everything felt different. Amanda stood near the fireplace, trembling with rage and disbelief. My parents sat on the sofa, silent. I stood by the doorway, the keys cool in my hand. "This isn't right," Amanda muttered. "You're not even blood." Her words cut through the room like they always had. But this time they didn't land. I stepped closer. And yet here we are. She lunged forward, trying to snatch the keys from my hand. I pulled them back smoothly. "No," I said firmly. "Not anymore." Her voice cracked. "You can't do this to me." I looked at her, not the polished woman she tried to be, but the desperate, cornered person beneath. "Amanda," I said softly, "you did this to yourself. All I did was stop standing in your shadow." The lawyer had arranged for the locks to be changed at sunset. She'd warned me to expect resistance. I hadn't realized how literal that warning would become. Around 5:30, the locksmith arrived, a kind man in his 50s with a well-worn tool bag. As he worked, the metallic clicks echoed through the hallway like punctuation marks at the end of a long sentence. Amanda watched from the doorway, tears streaking her face, arms crossed tightly. My parents stood a few feet behind her, uncertain and aging before my eyes. When the locksmith handed me the new set of keys, his expression was neutral but respectful. "All set, ma'am." Thanked him. He left quietly, like a stagehand exiting after the final scene. Amanda's voice broke the silence. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I met her gaze steadily. "No," I said softly. "I've spent my life regretting letting you walk over me. That ends today." He stared at me, trembling. Then, with a sharp breath, she turned and stormed out, my parents following slowly behind her like two people leaving a play they didn't understand. I closed the door behind them. The house was silent again. But this time it wasn't the silence of being overlooked. It was ownership. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, the door frames, the furniture. This house held decades of memories, some warm, many cruel. It had heard Amanda's laughter at my expense, my parents' quiet complicity, my own swallowed words. Now it heard me. I ended up on the back porch as the sun dipped below the trees. The air was crisp, tinged with the faint scent of autumn leaves. I sat in the old rocking chair, the one Amanda had once declared too shabby for guests, and let the fading light wash over me. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt steady, rooted, whole. I had spent a lifetime trying to belong in their version of family. Tonight they'd have to face mine. I held the new keys in my hand, their weight resting against my palm. For the first time they didn't feel like borrowed things. They felt like mine. This house had always been Amanda's stage. Tonight it became my home. I closed my eyes and let the final thought settle like a stone sinking to the bottom of still water. The tagalong held the house now. If this story gripped you, imagine what's coming next. Subscribe and turn on the bell to never miss another powerful revenge story.